The final meeting. The chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with tension. Every seat was occupied, every voice whispered, and every alien eye turned toward the center. It was not just another meeting. It was the final one with humanity. The human envoy stood alone at the round platform, tall and silent. He wore no expression, his uniform dark and simple, his face cold as stone. He looked at the gathered rulers of the galaxy without fear, without mercy. For the first time in history, it was the Council who felt weak, not the humans. The Zarathi Chancellor banged his claw against the table, his voice shaking. "You cannot leave us," he shouted, his words echoing. "If humanity walks away, the balance of the stars will collapse." The human did not answer. He simply watched as if their cries meant nothing. And in truth, they meant nothing now. The Valen speaker leaned forward, his wings twitching nervously. "You are overreacting," he pleaded. "The Council made mistakes, yes, but we can repair this, we can rebuild trust." Still, the human envoy said nothing. Only his silence answered them. And that silence was heavier than any words. The chamber grew restless. Leaders shouted over one another, desperate to stop what they already knew was unstoppable. Because for years humanity had been silent, preparing in shadows. Now they stood at the edge of departure. The envoy finally raised his hand, and with a voice calm but sharp, as a blade he spoke. "Humanity remembers. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget." A cold shiver spread through the council hall. Every alien leader froze. The air felt like ice pressing on their chest. The memory of their betrayal returned like fire in their minds. It had happened during the War of the Void Reavers. The Council had promised fleets, supplies, and aid to Earth. But when the moment came, they gave nothing. Human colonies burned. Ships were lost. Billions died. And still, the Council did nothing. Now those same Council members begged for mercy, but humanity had no mercy left. The envoy stepped closer to the center, his boots striking against the stone floor, each step echoing. "The Council watched us burn," he said, his voice calm but filled with weight. "You made your choice, now humanity makes ours." Gasps filled the chamber. The Traylan ambassador cried out, "If you leave, the borders will collapse, trade will fall, the galaxy will break into war." The human stared at him without emotion. "That is not our problem anymore," he replied. The silence after his words was terrifying. Every leader felt it deep in their bones, because they knew this was not a threat, it was the end. Some tried one last time. "We can offer compensation," one pleaded. "We can offer leadership," said another. "Do not punish us all for the mistakes of the past." The envoy's lips curled into the faintest shadow of a smile, not of joy but of bitter truth. "Punishment is not ours to give," he said. "It is yours to live with." And then he placed a small silver emblem on the council table. It was the crest of the Galactic Alliance, the symbol of unity, and he pushed it away from himself toward the council. It clattered against the stone surface, the sound echoing like a final bell. The council members stared in shock. Some whispered. In disbelief, others shook their heads, but none of them moved to stop him, because they all knew it was already too late. The envoy turned and began to walk away. Each footstep echoed louder than the last. The chamber that was once filled with shouting was now silent. Every alien eye followed him, helpless, terrified, powerless. One brave voice broke the silence. A frail council elder whispered, "What will you do now, human?" The envoy stopped at the doorway. He did not turn back. He did not look at them. He simply answered with words that chilled the room to silence again. "We will do what you never did. We will stand on our own." And with that, he walked out. The doors of the chamber closed behind him with a thunderous boom. The council sat frozen, their claws, wings, and hands trembling, for they understood the truth. Humanity was gone, and the galaxy could never undo what was done. The broken trust, the council chamber was still silent long after the human envoy left. But in the minds of every leader, the past replayed like a wound ripped open again. It was not only the council's failure, it was their betrayal. Years ago, when the Void Reavers invaded, humanity had stood at the front lines. The monsters had come from the black edges of the galaxy, their fleets devouring everything. They were ruthless, they were endless, and they were unstoppable. But Earth stood anyway because humanity had no choice. The Council had promised aid. The Council had promised fleets, soldiers, and weapons. Every world in the chamber had signed the pact. But when the battle came, the skies over Earth burned alone. Human ships fought until their hulls cracked open. Soldiers bled across colonies that were never rescued. Children screamed in the fires of broken cities. And still no alien fleets arrived. The Council had lied. They said their ships were delayed. They said resources were stretched thin. They said humanity was strong enough to survive a little longer. But those were only excuses. The truth was simple. Saving Earth was never their priority. The Zorathi Chancellor remembered that day. He remembered the report of a human city turned to ash. He had dismissed it as collateral loss. Now those words burned in his chest like poison. The Valen speaker had told her people that humans could endure. She said they would recover. They always recovered, but deep inside, she had known the truth. She had known Earth was abandoned and the humans never forgot. Every scarred world, every broken family, every graveyard under silent stars, they carried that memory like iron chains, and in their silence, they built something the Council could not see. Rumors had spread in the years after, of hidden shipyards deep within asteroid belts, of weapons so powerful even the Council's strongest fleets could not match them, of dreadnoughts forged in shadows. But no one believed. No one wanted to believe. The Council thought humans would come back. They thought humans would forgive. They thought the galaxy could continue as before. But they were wrong, fatally wrong. One alien commander, who had once served near human space, whispered into the chamber now. "I saw their convoys once," he said, his voice shaking. They moved in silence, ships black as night, engines hidden, weapons sealed. They were preparing, not for us, not for trade, but for something greater. The Council leaders exchanged nervous glances. If that was true, then humanity had not only left, they had ascended beyond reach. They had become something the Council could no longer control. The Traylan ambassador tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "Perhaps we can send an apology fleet. A gesture of peace," he said weakly. But everyone knew the truth. It was too late. Far too late. The Council had broken trust when trust mattered most. And now, there was no bridge to rebuild, no words to heal. Only regret remained. Across the stars, ordinary aliens began to whisper too. Merchants feared empty human trade routes. Soldiers whispered about the loss of humanity's fearless warriors. Scholars spoke of a galaxy without human invention. Fear spread like a plague on Earth itself. Cities were alive but locked away. No alien traveler was welcome anymore. Orbital stations scanned every visitor with suspicion. The skies above Earth were guarded by black warships, and in the silence of those fleets was a warning. Humanity trusted no one now. The memory of betrayal was carved into every human heart, and while the Council trembled in fear, humanity's silence was louder than any war. A Council elder finally broke down, his voice trembling. "We thought they would forgive us. We thought they would return," he whispered. "But they have walked away forever." No one argued with him, because every leader knew it was true. The broken trust was permanent, and it was the Council who had shattered it with their own hands. And far beyond the chamber, on the edge of the stars, human fleets gathered in silence, preparing for something even the Council could not imagine. The silence of Earth. The Council sent spies, but they never returned. They sent traders, but their ships were turned back. They even sent diplomats carrying golden words and false promises. But Earth stayed silent. The skies above the human homeworld were no longer open. Orbital defense stations circled the planet like steel guardians. Their weapons glowed faintly, always ready. No ship, no fleet, no envoy was allowed to pass without permission, and no permission was ever given. Alien eyes that once saw Earth as weak now looked at it with dread, because what they saw was not isolation, it was preparation. Rumors spread across the galaxy. Like wildfire, miners whispered of human convoys moving in the dark. Merchants swore they saw fleets of black ships vanishing into hyperspace without signal. A scout claimed to see a shadow the size of a moon drifting between stars, and then it disappeared before his sensors could lock. The council dismissed these stories at first, but deep inside, fear was growing, because every rumor carried the same truth. Humanity was building something beyond their reach. On the ground, Earth's cities glowed brighter than ever. Factories worked day and night, shipyards stretched across orbital rings, and strange lights flickered on the dark side of the moon. No outsider could see what was happening, but everyone knew it was not for peace. The Valen speaker called an emergency session. She flapped her wings nervously as she addressed the chamber. Humanity has withdrawn, she said, her voice trembling. But they are not hiding. They are preparing, and we do not know what for. The Traylan ambassador slammed his fist against the table. Then we must send a fleet, force them to open their doors, he growled. But no one agreed because the last time a council patrol entered human space, they never returned. Their signal vanished. Their ships were gone. Only silence remained. The silence of Earth was louder than war. It was a warning. And everyone in the galaxy understood it. Beyond human borders, fear took root in alien worlds. Merchants feared the collapse of trade. Smugglers feared the loss of secret routes through human space. Even pirates stayed away, whispering that human warships hunted the void now. Ships with no names, no signals, only black hulls that swallowed the light. A single sighting shook the galaxy. A dreadnought larger than anything the Council had ever built drifted past a border world. Its weapons were hidden, its engines silent. It did not fire, it did not speak, it simply passed through. But every alien who saw it felt the same chill. This was not the fleet of a fading race. This was the fleet of a power preparing to rise. In the council chamber, panic grew. The Zorathi chancellor hissed, "If they turn those ships against us, no world will survive." The Valen speaker whispered back, "They already have turned. Away, we are no longer part of their future." And far away on Earth itself, a child looked up at the night sky. She asked her father why the stars were covered with black ships. The father answered softly, "Because we will never let them hurt us again." The silence of Earth was more dangerous than any war cry. It was a vow that humanity would stand alone, and no council, no alien, no betrayal would ever touch them again. The walkout. The council chamber was restless. Leaders shouted, claws scraped against the tables, wings flapped nervously in the high ceilings. Fear had made them loud, but fear also made them weak. At the center of the chamber stood the human envoy once more. His face was calm, unreadable, as if carved from stone. He let the noise continue for a while until the sound became nothing but chaos. Then he raised his hand, and silence fell like a blade. Every eye was on him. Every leader leaned forward, desperate to hear words that could save them. But deep inside, they already knew no words could change what was coming. The Zorathi chancellor bared his teeth, his voice sharp. "You cannot abandon the council. Humanity belongs here." The envoy tilted his head, his expression flat. "Belongs?" he asked quietly. "Where were you when we bled, when we begged, when our children burned?" The chamber froze. No one had an answer. They all remembered the war. They all remembered their silence when Earth called for help. The human took a slow breath. Then, with calm movements, he reached into his coat and pulled out a silver emblem. It was the crest of the Galactic Alliance, the symbol of unity. Every member of the council wore it proudly. But in the human's hand, it looked dead. He placed it on the council table. The sound of metal against stone echoed like thunder in the chamber. The envoy pushed it away from himself, toward the council, toward the very rulers who had betrayed his people. "This no longer belongs to us," he said, his voice low but carrying through the vast hall. "Humanity is finished with your games, your lies, your empty promises. We will walk our own path, and you will live with the cost of your betrayal." Gasps filled the chamber. Some shouted in anger, others in panic, but not a single one stood up to stop him, because deep inside every leader knew the truth. Humanity was already gone. This was only the last word, the final cut of the blade. The Valen speaker tried one last plea. Please, you cannot survive alone. The galaxy is vast. Dangers beyond your power lurk in the dark. The envoy turned, his eyes toward her cold and sharp. We survived you, he replied. And that was the greatest danger of all. The chamber fell into silence again. Some leaders lowered their heads in shame. Others clenched their fists in fury. But none could deny the weight of his words. Slowly, the envoy turned. His boots struck the stone floor, echoing with each step. The great doors of the chamber loomed before him, tall and unyielding. And with every stride, the sound of his departure grew louder. It was not just a walk, it was a statement. A walk that ended centuries of alliance. At the last moment, one frail council elder dared to speak. His voice cracked, but it carried through the hall. Human, if you leave, will you ever return? The envoy did not stop. He did not turn. He did not give them the comfort of hope. His answer was short, sharp, final. No. And then the great doors opened. Light spilled into the chamber and the human envoy stepped through. The doors closed, behind him with a boom that shook the floor, and the chamber sat frozen, for they all knew what they had witnessed. It was not just a walk. It was the sound of a species leaving them forever. The council had begged, pleaded, threatened, and bargained. But nothing mattered now. The humans had walked out and the galaxy would never be the same again. The empty stars, it began slowly. At first, it was just whispers from merchants and travelers. Then it became reports from border worlds. And soon, the entire galaxy knew humanity was leaving. The great trade lanes that once carried human ships grew quiet. Stations that buzzed with life were suddenly empty. Entire colonies that had stood for centuries were abandoned overnight. Lights that once shined in the dark of space flickered out. The stars themselves seemed to dim. The council sent scouts to investigate. What they found only deepened their fear. Human settlements were not destroyed, not broken, not ruined. They were simply gone. The cities stood silent, the homes untouched. But the people, the fleets, the power, vanished. On the edge of the Threx border, a patrol ship discovered a station. The airlocks were sealed, the lights still glowing, but on the main hall wall a human banner hung. Burned into its surface were words in English, "We do not forget." Another report came from the Draylan sector. A colony world that once held millions of humans was empty. The fields were green, the rivers flowed, the machines still worked, but not a single human soul remained. It was as if they had stepped out of reality, leaving behind only the echo of their existence. Fear spread faster than light. The council realized this was not retreat. It was strategy. Humanity was not abandoning, they were preparing, pulling back their people, gathering their strength, moving into places no alien eye could follow. The Valen speaker called another emergency session. Her wings twitched as she spoke. They are leaving us to collapse. They are leaving us to chaos, she cried. They will return one day, not as allies, but as something greater. But the chamber was divided. Some still believed humanity would weaken in isolation. Others knew the truth. Humans were not vanishing into weakness. They were vanishing into power. Merchants who once relied on human markets cried in despair. Warriors who once relied on human fleets whispered in fear. Even pirates avoided empty human space. They said black warships hunted in the silence now, ships with no lights, no names. Silent hunters that made entire fleets disappear. One border captain swore he saw them, a formation of dreadnoughts gliding across the void. No signals, no banners, only silence. They passed his world and did nothing. But that nothing was worse than attack. It meant humanity no longer cared. They had already moved beyond him. Beyond all of them, the council grew desperate. The Zarathi chancellor demanded fleets to secure the empty stars. The Traylan ambassador screamed that the humans must be stopped before they grew too strong. But the truth crushed every plan. There was no way to stop them, because there was no battle. No war, no resistance, only silence. The empty stars became scars across the galaxy. Every abandoned world was a reminder. Every dark station was a warning. Humanity was leaving piece by piece, until one day, nothing would remain. And yet, the fear was not just in their leaving. The fear was in the question, where were they going? What were they building? What future waited beyond the council's reach? In a small council chamber, one elder spoke softly, his voice full of dread. "They are not gone," he whispered. "They are only waiting, and when they return, the galaxy will remember what it lost." The empty stars did not answer. They only watched in silence as humanity walked away, forever. The regret, the galaxy began to unravel. At first it was only small cracks, barely noticed, a border skirmish here, a trade dispute there. But without humanity, those cracks grew wider. Human fleets had once patrolled the trade routes. They had stood against pirates, slavers, and raiders. They had kept the darkness of space at bay. Now those same routes were empty, and predators filled the silence. Merchants cried out for help, but no one answered. Council fleets were scattered and weak. Their ships were slow, their captains untested. When pirates came, planets burned. When slavers struck, entire colonies vanished. And the council had no answer. On world after world, the same whispers rose. Where are the humans? Why did they leave us? But no human voice ever replied. The Valen speaker tried to calm the chamber. She spread her wings and shouted, "We must hold together. We must be strong without them." But her words carried no weight, because every leader in the chamber knew the truth. They had built their safety on human strength, and without it they were prey. The Zarathi chancellor growled in frustration. He remembered the human fleets that once stood beside his own. He remembered the iron will of human soldiers who fought to the last breath. And he remembered how he had voted to delay aid during the Reaver War. The memory burned him alive, but regret could not bring them back. The Traylan ambassador wept openly. Her people's colonies were falling one by one. Once humans had promised them protection. Now, without humanity, her people faced extinction. And she knew it was her council's betrayal that caused it. Reports came in daily, star systems collapsing into chaos, rebel factions rising, pirates carving empires from abandoned sectors, slavers hunting freely in the void, and everywhere, whispers of regret. On a council floor littered with desperate voices, one elder whispered the truth. "We thought humanity needed us," he said, his voice trembling, "but it was we who needed them." Silence fell across the chamber, because no one could deny it. Humanity had been the wall between order and chaos. Now that wall was gone, and the galaxy itself was crumbling. In secret, some worlds sent messages into the dark. They begged humanity to return. They offered riches, power, obedience. But no answer ever came. Their signals vanished into silence, and in that silence was the cold truth. Humanity was listening, but humanity did not care. On Earth, children grew under skies filled with silent warships. They were taught of betrayal. They were taught to stand alone. They were taught to never trust the council again. Generations were being forged with fire in their hearts. While the council fell deeper into fear, the Valen speaker broke down during one meeting. Tears streaked her face as she cried, "We destroyed the very hand that saved us. We turned on them when they needed us, and now they are gone. Forever gone." No one comforted her, because her words were true. Every leader in the chamber felt the same crushing weight of regret, and in the void, the empty stars still watched. Where human colonies once glowed, there was only silence. Where human fleets once roamed, there was only darkness. The galaxy had lost its shield, and the council could do nothing to bring it back. Regret had become their prison, and every passing day, the silence of humanity grew heavier. It was no longer the silence of anger, it was the silence of finality. The council finally understood. They had begged too late, they had betrayed too deep, and now the humans had left them to their fate. Humanity beyond reach. The last human fleet was seen on the edge of the galaxy, a line of black warships stretching like shadows across the stars. They did not speak. They did not signal. They simply moved, silent and unstoppable. Alien scouts tried to follow, but their ships failed. Sensors went dark, engines froze, and when the systems came back online, the humans were gone, vanished beyond the rim into the places no council ship dared to travel. The council gathered in fear. They stared at the star charts, searching for answers, but there were none. Humanity had walked beyond their reach, and the galaxy could do nothing but watch. The Valen speaker trembled as she whispered, "They have gone where we cannot follow." The Zarathi chancellor slammed his claw against the table. "They are building something out there," he growled. "And when they return, the galaxy will not survive." But no one truly believed they would return, not as allies, not as enemies. For this was not exile, this was evolution. On abandoned human worlds, the signs were clear, carved into stone, burned into steel. Warnings left behind for those who searched. One message was found again and again. "Do not look for us." Merchants stopped traveling through human sectors. They said ghost ships haunted the stars. Black dreadnoughts that appeared without sound and vanished without trace. Some said the humans were watching. Others said they had already forgotten the galaxy. But all agreed on one thing: humanity was gone forever. The council chamber grew. Quieter with each passing day, the arguments faded, replaced with silence and fear. Because what could they do now? They had begged, pleaded, and betrayed. They had destroyed the one bond that mattered, and now they were left alone in the dark. A frail elder stood at the center of the chamber one last time. His voice cracked as he spoke. "We thought we could control them," he said. "We thought we could use them, then discard them. But they were the fire that kept the galaxy alive. And now the fire is gone." His words echoed across the empty chamber. No one argued, no one replied, because every leader knew it was true. The galaxy had lost its shield, its strength, its spark, and nothing could bring it back. Far beyond the rim, humanity thrived. They built cities under new suns. They forged weapons that no alien eye would ever see. They prepared not for war, not for peace, but for their own future. A future without the council, without betrayal, without chains. Children grew in these new worlds. They learned the history of the council. They learned the pain of betrayal. And they learned a single lesson that echoed in every classroom. Trust only in humanity. Generations would rise and fall, and still, the humans would remember, because humanity did not forgive. Humanity did not forget. And humanity never returned. In the end, the council sat helpless. They looked to the stars where humans had once stood, and they realized with horror the galaxy was smaller now, weaker, broken, because the one species that gave it strength had walked away, forever. And so the council watched. They watched the stars grow silent. They watched their own power crumble, and they lived with the truth carved into their hearts. Humanity had gone beyond reach, and nothing would ever undo the damage.